Okay, let's talk about. First of all, I got to give you the presentation. It says WordCamp 2018. That was my first WordCamp I spoke, and I spoke about this subject. So I kind of kept it like an endearing kind of thing. So you know, I'm sorry, this was like our graphical interface back then. So today we're going to talk about two things. First, we're going to talk about custom post types, which are a personalized type of content that WordPress offers. And we're going to talk about custom taxonomy types, which is a personalized type of categories. Well, a bit about myself. Like I said, I'm all over the map. I think Joe introduced me and I said everything I had to say. Well, this I added it. They've asked me in previous meetups to, like, you know, maintain your mic silence. But if it's not required here, like Joe said, everybody has their own rhythm and whatnot. Let me just drag the faces over here so I can look at you guys and not start looking at the other monitor. So with that said, let's go over the slides. And I think something is wrong.
Oh, we can see you.
Which you can see my slides, yeah?
Yeah, we can see.
Okay. Okay, cool. So hold on. So who's this meeting? Who's this meetup for? I would say that all levels are welcome. We're going to talk about some technical stuff, and some stuff might be known to some, but not to others, and vice versa. But I think that my key takeaway is that for you to, you know, start thinking, thinking about what I would say on how to expand WordPress as a content management system that it truly is. And, you know, speaking about custom post types is one of the key things to understand how the inner workings of WordPress is. And, you know, basically I'm going to talk and I'm going to code. I'm going to code slowly, and I'm going to explain everything step by step. So it's going to be theory and practice. Now, the reason why I speak about this topic, I also speak in different meetups and WordCamps and whatnot. I sometimes feel that, yeah, we can talk about, as far as development is concerned, yeah, we can talk about the new stuff, the JavaScript, the Gutenberg, like the WordPress does this and that. But sometimes I feel that we forget that there's also a group of people who are interested in learning about WordPress, the fundamentals as to how WordPress works from a development point of view. So I like to think, or I like to contribute with what I know in that specific area, so that more and more people, you know, can start looking at the WordPress API as to what it offers and what you can do with it. And so that's part of the reasons why I speak a lot about this. I speak about loops. I speak about filters and hooks and stuff like that, because that's what I truly feel is at the heart of what WordPress is. So yeah, let's get this going. So if I go into the fundamentals, hold on, I don't even know where my mouse is. That's why I'm a little, hold on people, because what happened to my mouse? Oh, here it is. So what is a custom post type? I usually, when we look at the codex definitions, it's, it says something like Wikipedia-ish, which is, WordPress can hold and display many different types of content, a single type, blah, blah, blah. And you're like, whoa, but what is this? So, let's slow down for a bit and let's talk about this for a second. So in the previous explanation, I don't know if you guys want to read it. Is it visible for everybody? Okay, cool. So it's a little cryptic. I mean, it says that WordPress can display different types of content, and content is generally called a post, although post is also a specific post type, which that makes it very confusing. And internally, all the post types are stored in the same place in the WP post database table, but are differentiated by a column named post type. It's a little too technical. So let's slow down a little bit. So WordPress can hold different types of content. Now, what do we mean by that? Well, typically, and let me exit here and let me open this WordPress installation that we have. It's just a local installation that I have here. So out of the box, when you install WordPress, you typically have pages and posts. And as you work with them, you add either pages or posts. And sometimes you don't know what the specific difference is. But WordPress out of the box, it offers a few other post types that are not really visible to the public initially. So I'm going to open this utility. It's a utility that I recommend it has it on the PC as well. It's called SQL Pro, which basically allows you to connect to your local databases without using the command line. I personally prefer to have a graphical user interface when it comes to databases, so I can just check out all the databases I'm working on when I'm coding. So right now, for this WordPress installation, it's called Meetup. So whenever you enter this, when you select this, you come here and you know what, let me do it from scratch. It's called SQL Pro. And basically you open via localhost and the username is root. So it's pretty easy. And once you're in there, you just choose your database you want to work with. In my situation, or for this particular, it's called the Meetup. So this is going to open all the tables that WordPress has by default once you install it. The one we are particularly interested in, it's called the WP post table. This table holds all the posts that you have for your particular WordPress install. Since this site, this installation is fresh, it has very little posts. But the key column that I want you guys to look at is the one called post type, which is this one over here. I'm going to drag it all the way here. I don't know if it's visible because of zooming issues. Let me see if I can zoom. Oh, yeah, I can. Oh, nice. Well, not that great. So this post type column, this one over here that I'm toggling, this has a couple of values called either post or page, and one called attachment. Attachments are typically the media that you upload via WordPress. Behind the scenes, WordPress treats that as a custom post type attachment. So this is particularly useful if you want to take a look at what the properties are. But basically what a custom post type allows you to do is alter this post type column with any value that you wish. So right now it's just posts and pages, but you can think of any value that you would like to use. So why is this useful? And we'll get to that in a bit. Well, actually, no, we're going to get to that now. So scenarios might not be sufficient with WordPress out of the box. So what do I mean by that? So when I started developing for WordPress and I saw that it had posts and pages, I was like, okay, I'll just put everything either in pages or posts. So I started to use it, and sometimes scenarios came up where things changed my perspective. I said to myself, okay, I was working on this tourism site and they had tours. And I was like, oh, so maybe I should just use the posts as my tours and start, adding categories here and adding this there. And, next thing you know, you came up with a solution that, solved the problem. And so you thought. But then all of a sudden the client was like, well, I also want to have a blog, And I was like, oh, but I already did this. So how do I do that? So here's where you come at crossroads and you were like, okay, maybe I should just do a category called blog and a category called tours. And I'll just put the tour stuff in the tours and the blog stuff in the blogs. And next thing you know, you had this spaghetti installation and you were making things more and more rigid, because everything relied on what WordPress came out of the box. So as I started to learn more and more, you learn about this custom post type, and this allowed you to define a custom post called tours. So everything that was tours related would go into that specific section. So this way I was able to segregate things, and this allowed me to expand things further, because when you start doing client work and when you start developing stuff like that, you need to kind of segregate this thing to allow greater flexibility when it comes to growing. And this means less work for you, and it means less dependencies on one particular thing for the client. So when it comes to migrate or do whatever you want with it, you have more options to work with. So that scenario is what made me realize that I needed to work with something called custom post types. So whenever you're working on a project and you feel like your posts don't fit that anymore, this is when you need to think about custom post types. So where can I use this? So I'm a developer. I could, for example, create a custom post type called portfolio and just put all my client work in there. And I'll just put the information that I need about all the client work that I've done. Some people might have a recipes website where the choice is pretty obvious. You would have recipes, and you would just add recipes and filter them and this and this and that. And the examples, I heard one with church. For example, churches work a lot with events. So you could have something called events, and churches, all the events that you start doing, with that particular church are based on those events. And you add the information that you need for that particular church in those events. So this allows you to have greater flexibility and just work your way through with a specific type of content. So a type of content is a post. Now, this came in the definition. Now, what do we mean by that? Basically, any type of content, be this custom or not, is called a post. So from a WordPress perspective, there's two types of content delivered, either a page or a post. We're going to get to the differences between them in a minute, but definitely a page is a post and a post is a post. So everything in WordPress is a post. So you're going to hear these terms, and it's going to confuse the hell out of you. But as you get better and better, you are going to start noticing the differences. But basically, all types of content in WordPress is called a post. So that leads me to the next item. A post is also a post. This, when WordPress started, it was a blogging platform. So everything that you added was called a post. And that kind of stuck there. And so whenever you speak the word post, you got to know if it's a blog post or it's a specific type of content. So the last item we already saw, they're all kept in the same place, which is the WP post table, which is this one over here. But there's a different column in the table called post type, which is this one over here. And this is what we're going to do. We're going to create a custom value that is not going to be either a post or a page, but it's going to have the behavior of either one. Okay. So what are the differences between a post and a page? Okay. First, I kind of need to cover this because sometimes we get confused. And when we want to create a custom post type, it's best to know the scenario up front. So you know which attributes you want to create when you want to create a custom post type. So the first difference between a blog post and a page is time. What do I mean by that? Posts are typically time, they are ordered in a chronological way, and pages are timeless in the way that once I set a page, I kind of forget about it unless I come and edit it. We've seen it with the blog. Whenever we add new entries to our blog, they start to shift down and down and down, and the new ones are placed on top, or vice versa, or depending on how you want to order them. But pages don't have that kind of capability. Pages are something that you kind of write, and that's it. So if I want to write about myself, it's something that I just do, and that's that. Posts are social. With this, I mean that posts have the capability of adding comments to it. And when you do custom post types, you can also do that. That's very helpful if you have recipe sites, for example, you want people to comment on them. Pages do not. I mean, you could add them, but it's a kind of a tacky thing to do. So I would definitely stick to, keeping the definition that posts are social. Categories versus hierarchy. Posts have categories, and we're going to talk about that in taxonomies. Basically, taxonomies are just a system of organizing information. So posts allow you to categorize all your content and start labeling them so that you could just add them and people can view more of that information particular to that specific category, whereas pages do not allow that ability. But pages do have hierarchy. What do I mean by that? By that, I mean that pages can have a parent-to-child relationship, where I can speak about, for example, I can have a page about us, and I can have a sub-page called Our Story, and that is a child of About Us. We've seen this in WordPress, and whenever we go here, let me show you this really quick. You can add a new page, and when you start here, my test page, when you start doing that, under page attributes in your WordPress installation, you can select who's the parent of this particular page. Posts, by definition, do not have that. Why am I explaining this? Why am I explaining this? All of this is because when you're going to add your custom post type, you got to think about all these scenarios. Do I want to have a parent-to-child relationship? Yes or no? Do I want this content to be sorted in a time-ordered fashion or not? Do I want to label this content? Do I want to set categories to it? Do I want to have comments? Do I want to have metadata? All of this information is something that you are going to have to ask yourself when you are leveling or working with the client, because the client doesn't really know that, but you are the one that's going to know, and you're going to handle all the scenarios, and you're going to come with a solution that is going to solve, or it's going to enhance the situation for your particular client. And that's where the true power comes from. So let me save this really quick, and let's go back to our slides. So, and the last is RSS. I know, I'm really old. So back in the day, before Facebook, we used to use RSS a lot. I don't know if people still use it. I don't, but back in the day, you used to stay in touch through feed readers. And you had this feed reader on your phone or your computer or your tablet, and you could, start subscribing to different blogs of people that are sites that you liked, and every time a blog was posted, it would get updated on your feed. So posts have that capability, but pages do not. So if for some particular reason in the year 2020 you still rely on that, it's good to know that little detail. So I just mentioned it just in case. So why is it important to use a personalized type of content? WordPress is like a Swiss knife, and this is why I gave you guys the example of how I started initially, putting everything on the blog, but not necessarily, I don't know if the saying is true in the US, but not everything is solved with a hammer. That's kind of the mentality that you need to have. So you need to have WordPress is like the Swiss knife, and you need to, pull out the correct blade for you to solve the right problem. When do I need to create a custom post type? Each scenario is different. Each site is. I would say know your IA, which is information architecture, and your knowledge of WordPress. The information architecture is more of a bird's eye view of what the content is going to be in your website. So this way you can see, and for example, let's say it's going to have a services section, it's going to have a portfolio, and it's going to have a history section. So you're going to start looking at these sections. You were like, okay, do I need to modify this content a lot? Is it going to get updated a lot? Yes or no? So these are the questions that you need to ask yourself in order to make the decisions and offer the solution to the client. So the use of plugins. Yeah, I know there are plugins that do that. There are tons of it. But the purpose here is for you to use your own custom code. And I kind of advocate for that, because the less plugins that you have, the less code load that your site is going to receive. This is something that, when I come to work with clients, they want to redesign because they say my page is slow, even though, our hosting is also very good, but sometimes you can't deal with all these tons of plugins that are installed by default, because when you start using WordPress, you might have a solution with a plugin. So next thing you know, everything is a plugin. And I've seen sites that have like around 40 to 50 plugin installations, and they are ridiculous. They slow the site down. So if you can use code, like the less amount of code possible in order to solve a problem, that's way better than using a plugin that you kind of don't know what the inner workings of them are. So it might have a lot of options that you don't need. And that's why I always, advocate for coming up with your own solutions. And I'm just a geek, so I like to, do things myself. So if you have a little bit of that as well, I definitely recommend you using that. So with that said, let's create a custom post type. So it's time to code, but let's come up with a few definitions. First, WordPress registers a custom post type with this function called register post type. And it receives two parameters: the post type itself and the arguments. We'll get there in a minute. And to use the previous function, we need to get the right hook to run it into it. So let me zoom this just a little bit. Let's see if it's possible. Okay, so this is the function, the register post type. This is the function that you use to create your own, but you need a hook for that to run. I'm speaking about hooks. It's a little bit out of the scope of this as Meetup, but basically what hooks are, it allows you to tap into WordPress order of loading things, so that when WordPress is loading, when WordPress is at a specific timeline when it comes to booting up, you can tap into it and you can add your own code. So basically, what we're doing here is we're going to tap into the init hook, and we're going to use our function, our callback, which is our function that we're going to use. So basically, what we're telling WordPress is, hey, whenever you are at the init stage, I want you to execute this function. And in this function called our callback is where we're going to register our custom post type. So that's it for the theory. So let's get into practice. So in here, I have a WordPress installation. I have the theme here. I have a couple of themes installed. I think I am using the 2019 theme. I think so. Let's go into Appearance and check out the themes. Yes, I am. So I'm going to use that one. So here we come with another dilemma. Should I use a plugin, or should I just inject my code into, should I just inject my code into the functions file that WordPress offers by default? I'm going to go with plugin this time. This is what WordPress definitely recommends. So even though I said, the overload of plugins, this is just another plugin. Well, the reason for this is, and we're going to do this in a minute, is because let's say, for example, I'm going to open this, and I have this include file here. It's just this file gets called inside my functions of 2019 theme called Meetup, and it's this file over here. So I'm just going to do a quick demo, and I'm going to run this function called wp-die, which basically kills my WordPress. It's very useful when you want to debug. It kills my WordPress. So whenever I execute this, this is going to stop my WordPress installation. So I just killed it. But what I wanted to show you is I could have done this inside this file called meetup.php, which is this file over here. It's this one. I don't know if I can zoom this. I think no. Window, zoom. No, it doesn't. Oh, I just killed it. Oh, let me go back. HD Clouds, Meetup, SGO, themes over here, and 2019. So this is the file that I have, but it comes with a problem, and this is part of the reasons why your plugin is recommended. You see this button over here called, let me comment this out. Let me take this out. You guys see this thing over here, update now. Whenever you hit this, it's going to wash away all the changes that you've done to your theme. So there's two workarounds. Either you can do a child theme, or you can use a plugin. So whenever we hit this, it's going to kill my file. This is going to appear as deleted, as expected over here. So if you're working with a theme and it gets updated, your changes might be washed away. So it's best to use a plugin, and which is exactly what we're going to do. So to create a plugin, we go to a plugins directory that WordPress comes out of the box. So let's call this Santa Clarita CP. So we don't have any collisions. And what we're going to do is we're going to create one. We're going to copy this file over here, and we're just going to open this file. And silence is golden. That is correct. So we are ready. We are ready. We're going to activate the plugin. In order to do a plugin, and this is a little bit out of the scope of this meetup. So basically, we have to add these attributes to our PHP file, where we have the plugin name, what its URL is, what the description is, and who the authors are. In this case, it's me and you, all of you, and what the version is, and blah, 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 yada, yada, yada. So whenever I hit that, and whenever I save this, and I go to our plugins directory, it's going to have this this plugin ready to be activated. So I'm going to hit the activate. It's not going to do anything because I haven't done anything with my code. So let's get going. In order to do that, let's go back to our slides, and we said, okay, we need to tap into the init action and execute our callback. So let's do that. And so we're going to come over here, and we're going to do add action, and we're going to do init, And what are we going to call this? This is going to be our function that's going to register the post type. In this case, I want this to be called Meetup CPT CB. It's basically like a convention that I use. Typically, I made a mistake there. It's called custom post type and then underscore CB, which is callback. You want this function to be unique, because if it's not unique, WordPress is going to tell you, hey, there's two functions here. What am I supposed to do? So typically, I use something that I can understand, and that WordPress, there's no naming collisions. So I'm going to define the function. I'm going to execute it, and I'm going to say this over here. And we are ready, and our meetup's over. No, just kidding. So this is our callback, and this is what's going to get. This is what's going to get executed whenever this hook runs. So in here, I'm going to create my custom post type. So post type. So how do I do that? If I go back to my previous slide, it's with this function called register post type. So I am going to do that. So for this example, I love movies, Hollywood, India movies, European, everything. So we're going to do movies. So register post type. I'm going to call this movies, and I'm going to call this variable mov_args. These are going to be the arguments that I'm going to need in order to create the custom post type. Now, where's the variable? We haven't created it yet. So typically when I work with custom post type, there's two things that you need to keep in mind. It's the labels. What are the labels? The labels are all these buttons that you have over here. All of these, like add new, published, delete, view, all of that. WordPress allows you to tap into that and rename them. You can use the default ones, but I usually edit them a little bit for greater legibility, so that people can actually read this and say, okay, this is to add a new movie. So we're going to do just that. I'm going to create an array. In this case, I said it's going to be movie. I haven't created it yet. So I'm going to call it move labels. So this is going to have all my labels that wait, what's wrong with me? This is going to have all the labels that I'm going to need to create this custom post type. So it works with an array, and it works with a key value array. Now I'm going to copy and paste all of this over here so that we don't end tomorrow with this meetup. So these are all these are not all, these are some of the values that this array can expect. Now, the $1 million question is which values can I add to this array? So for that, WordPress has a code reference, or code reference, no longer the codex. I have to change the wording over there. Codex is the old stuff, and the developer handbook is the new stuff. That's what's going to get called now. So in this URL, I'm leaving right here. I can paste this into chat if you guys need it. In here, you can see all the labels that you can use for this particular array when you want to create custom post types. So let's pay it a quick visit. So if I paste this over here, it's going to open this, and it's going to have all these values that this array you can insert it into. Now, I'm not going to go over them one by one. Again, it's going to take too long. So I usually use the ones that I feel that the client is going to need the most. So in this case, it's the name. What's the singular name going to be? What's the add new going to be? Add new item, and so on and so forth. So I'm just going to save this. Nothing's going to happen yet because I haven't defined this variable yet. So over here, I have my labels ready. So now I am ready to create the second array that I need, which is this fellow over here. It's the arguments. So this is going to be the same thing. I'm going to create a new array. And just like, and this is why WordPress is so awesome, just like the labels array, with the arguments array, there is a plethora. And when I mean plethora, it's a lot. There's a plethora of arguments that you can use to register your custom post type. So again, going back, so these are the labels that I'm going to need for the buttons that the WordPress dashboard offers over here. And this one over here, the arguments are going to be the arguments for my specific post type that I'm about to create. So that's why I gave you guys all the theory about what posts are, what pages are, what hierarchy is, what isn't, because in this arguments array, this is where you're going to define that stuff. This is where you're going to say, okay, this custom post type of movies is going to be this, this, and that. So with movies, I feel, and you can disagree with me, I feel that movies need to behave like a post. So whenever I add movies, it's going to be chronological. The new movies, like all this Hollywood stuff, is going to be added to the first, and so on and so forth. So I want to use a post type of ability. I want the movie's custom post type to behave like a post. So we'll get to there in a minute. So going back to this URL, if I open this in my browser, again, it's going to open this is the arguments array I'm mentioning that we're creating. And these are all the arguments that it takes. I mean, the list is huge and we're not going to know all of them now, but you are going to learn from them as you add more and more and more. And as you're going to need different scenarios. And in here, you can read absolutely. I honestly have not used them all in 10 years, but I've read some of them and we're like, man, these guys even thought of this one. So this is why WordPress is so cool from a developer point of view, because it offers the solutions that you need in order to, expand this even further. So to keep things as simple as possible, we are going to just run a few. So the first one is the labels. This labels is going to be the labels I define here. I don't know if you see my cursor. When I highlight them, it's going to highlight this one over here. So I'm basically saying, okay, I want my labels to be this array over here. This is the array I just created. I want the description to be, this is optional, but I do this because I like to give things to the client that are concise and that he understands or she understands that, what this does, because clients are clients, and I'm sure this is true in the United States and everywhere else in the world. So you got to be as descriptive as possible. This is very funny, but mind me here. So I'm going to paste a couple of them, and I'm going to explain what some of them are, because it might seem intimidating at first. So I just copied all of these. Let me order this a little bit over here, because yeah, I'm that type of guy. So public means is it going to be accessible is it going to be public? Because some pages in WordPress are private. You need a password for it, and so on. So in here, I want to say, okay, I want this to be public. Is it publicly queryable? Can I query it? Do I want it to show it in the WordPress dashboard? Yes. Do I want to use a custom loop for it? I say yes. Well, true in this case. What is the menu icon, which is this cute little icon that appears over here? WordPress offers the ability to either use its own library of dash icons it has, or you can do your own. It accepts PNG or SVG values. It's all in this URL that I'm pointing here, all that explanation. Has archive, I'm going to set this to true. This is very important, and I'm going to go a little bit into a template hierarchy over here. So an archive basically means a page that holds all the records of movies in this case. So I can go into my theme and create an archive page called movies, and I can just do whatever I want with it. So if you set this to no, it's going to grab another file. But this is a little bit out of the scope of this, but I'm going to set this true. Rewrite, this is a very interesting parameter, and this has to do a lot with SEO. Sometimes the client will say, well, SEO is really, really important to me. The URL needs to be this and this and that, and it cannot be movies. So in this case, I am saying, okay, rewrite this custom post type to be best movie reviews, and then it's going to go like this, and it's going to go and add the title over here. So instead of being the default one is, it's going to be the one I define over here. But in this case, I'm overriding that, and I'm saying, okay, I want this URL structure to behave mysite.com. Sorry about the typing over there. mysite.com / best movie reviews / the title of the post, the slug, so to speak. So whenever I add this custom post type, it's going to behave exactly like this. So in this scenario, let's say my client hypothetically told me it needs to have this URL structure. So I am changing that, and I'm setting it specifically to that with front true, which means override it, please. Hierarchical means it can be either false or true, and we're going to go back to the whole page versus post thing. Do I want a parent-to-child relationship out of this or not? Do I want this to have a post behavior, or do I want it to have a page behavior? I am setting this to false. By false, it means I want this to behave like a post, to behave like a post. What's the menu position? In here, this accepts a value where you can move the position of this inside your dashboard over here. So you can also, set that. Show and rest. I'm going to give you this heads up because this is going to save you a lot of headaches and frustrations, and people want to throw their computers out of the window. When I started to do that, when I did this, my posts appeared with the old editor. And the client was like, well, what's the deal? I want this new editor. I was like, man, what? I'm like, what is going on here? And then you were like, oh man, you're searching and searching and searching. And this took me like 5 hours to solve. Basically, if I set this to true, Gutenberg is going to appear as the editor for this particular custom post type. If I set this to false, the old one is going to appear. So I just saved you 5 hours of your life. Do keep this in mind, please, because this is very, very important. I don't even understand why this value inside this array here kind of defines, because this has to do with the REST API. Why does this have to do with Gutenberg? I don't even know, but and you have been warned. So if you do, I hope you don't, spend too much time on that. The supports array is really important. What do I want this to include? This is an array on which you can define what this custom post type is going to have. In this case, I'm saying editor, title, and excerpt. There's a bunch of values which I included here. It's called editor, comments, revisions, trackbacks, who the author is, what the excerpt, page attributes, thumbnail, custom fields, and whatnot. So in this case, I want to go with thumbnail, because I think that I'm going to need it, because I mean, what's a movie without a picture? I mean, seriously. So I'm going to include this thumbnail over here, and I saw that over there. I want custom fields because I may need them. I don't know. I don't know yet. Well, or actually, I haven't done my job with the client, and I haven't asked them. But I may need this. What custom field may I need? I may need a rating system for my movies. So I'm going to have a checkbox that's going to people allow you to rate the movies. Or I might need, I don't know, a second image, a big poster or something. The scenarios I don't know, but I'm just laying the field here. I'm just, putting the seeds here so that things can go exactly as I need it to behave. So again, these are all the arguments that I'm going to need. All the list is on this URL over here. And with that, I'm almost done. The last function, and we go back to my slides over here, it's called the register post type, which is the function that I defined in this slide over here. It's this one over here. And in here, I'm going to call this post type movies, and my arguments are going to be these guys over here. So I do that, and this is also another, not hack, but something that I use a lot. I rewrite my rules because WordPress has this weird stuff that sometimes you update things and it just doesn't show up, and you're like, oh, what happened here? It's because it needs to rewrite its rules in order to know that something has changed. So I do that, and let's do this. And when I hit refresh over here, my movies are right here. So when I hit the movies, it's going to have my labels here that I just have here. For example, na, which I define that somewhere over here, I think. Yes, right here, not found. So I add a new movie. And I am going to use the Gutenberg editor. I'm going to disable that just so you guys know that I wasn't joking about that. I'm going to comment this out. And whenever I add a new movie over here, It's going to have the old editor. You're like, oh, I'm not going to get into that debate. Some people love it, some people hate it. I love you all either way. So this is just this is just for you guys to use. I like you can appreciate here. I have a featured image which I define in this array over here. If I take this out, it's not going to have it anymore. So if I refresh this, the capability is gone. So again, why do I do this? In a way, I'm a huge Apple fanboy. I give the clients the less amount of options possible because clients are clients and I love them, but I just don't want them to get lost. If you give them the least amount of options, they'll follow along, and you want their sites to succeed and you want them to use this stuff. You don't want to overwhelm them with a lot of these options that they don't need. Sometimes I just need a title for my custom post type. I just need a title. And sometimes I just need the excerpt, or sometimes I just need the editor. You don't know. I don't know what the scenario is. All I know is I can accommodate myself to the specific needs in order to give the least amount of stuff that the client actually needs. So in this case, I definitely want a thumbnail. So I'm going to do that. And I want also to have an author, because I feel that, as I'm going to review movies, some authors may be more credible than others. So when you do this, you do this, it's going to have the authors over here, which again are the authors, are the users defined in your WordPress dashboards, which are these guys over here. So let's say, I don't know, Joe may be a fantastic sci-fi reviewer, and I'm more of the guy of Brazilian movies. So again, that's part of that's outside of this thing over here. So we're ready. Just add a movie here. I'm gonna add a favorite movie. Well, I'm gonna add this City of God. City of God, and I love this movie. I'd recommend this movie. It's a Brazilian movie. And let's do a City of God. City of God, and let's go to this image over here. This is a fantastic movie, by the way, if you haven't seen it. Let's do this, let's do that, and let's do this over here. Let's save this. And if I'm going too fast, I'm very sorry. So add new movie. I'm going to set the featured image, and I am going to drag that movie and over here. Yes. And I'm going to set this. I love this movie. And this is a small introduction. And I hit the publish button. As you can see, if you look at the permalink structure over here, let me zoom this a little bit. You can see best movie reviews, City of God. Again, this is something I defined over here in the rewrite rules. I have complete control of how I want this to be structured. From an SEO perspective, this can really boost your stuff up. I'm not into the SEO thing a lot. I just get the requirements and make the decision. So in here, it's all good. Whenever I hit this, it's going to open, obviously, my theme over here. Wow, this is really nice. So I love this movie. This is my template 2019. But since I defined this argument as hierarchical, as archive as true, if I go over here and take this out, this URL will roll all the movies that I have. If I add another movie, let's add another movie. Let's add a new movie, The Irishman. The Irish or The Irishman? I don't know. The Irish. Love score saves. Okay, so this one I'm not going to add a thumbnail, but if I hit here refresh, again, this is going to behave exactly as a as a blog post, a sequential kind of thing. You can get into your theme template and edit this stuff if you want, but this is a little bit outside the scope. And with that, I think we are, well, this was part of the slides I was supposed to give you, but I completely forgot. But this kind of says what I explained in the code. And let's see some code. It was all the stuff that I just did. I'm sorry I skipped these slides, but I'll just speak, and that's it for custom post types. I don't know if anybody has a question, so we can talk about this specific topic, and then we get into the taxonomies.
Hey, Marco, thanks again. There were a few questions that were asked along the way, and you may have answered,
Okay.
but
Let me see them.
yeah, so I'll read them off to you, and you could
Okay.
address them one by one.
Okay, sure.
Thanks again. It's pretty awesome to see you walk us through that, because I did a while back. I did a lynda.com tutorial on custom post types, and I used it for a specific instance, but then I didn't do it anymore, so I totally forgot it. So it's so awesome to see you go through those things. I think it was one of our members asked, how do you write the function? In other words, what's the syntax? Is there a documentation that explains how? So this sounds like it's someone that's brand new to doing this. So
this function over here, or
just in general?
Yeah,
just in general.
yeah, that was me, Maria.
okay.
So I understand the concept and everything, but do you have to know PHP, or how do you
Yes.
write it? Okay.
Yes, you have to know your PHP. You have to know your code. You have to know that WordPress. When I define this action over here, this is a called a hook. This over here called add action. Do you see it over here?
Yeah.
This is called a hook, which, as the name implies, you can hook your code into WordPress.
Yeah.
And in this case, this is the name of the hook, and it's called init. And this is the function that I, as a developer, want to run for this particular hook. So if I scroll all the way down, this is the function I wrote. So with PHP, you start with function. That's the keyword so that PHP knows that this is a function. The name of the function that it's defined in the hook below over here. And this case is called this one over here. Let's do it twice. And these little brackets here are called parameters. These are what does this function need to run? In this case, empty parameters means nothing. I don't need anything. And these little guys over here, I don't know the name of them in English. Parentheses, are they? No, wait.
Curly braces.
Brackets. Curly braces. They're curly braces. Curly braces indicate that this is the start of a code block. In this case, a function. So this is where all of whatever I do here, runs inside this function. So when I hook into that using WordPress, I'm going to execute this function. And what I explained here is all of this inside this function, all of this creates a custom post type as a plugin, by the way, because I declared this this over here. Yeah. So again, there are plugins that do this behind the scenes, but when you do this yourself, you have absolute control as to what gets included and what doesn't.
So yeah,
that's like
I want to be able to do it myself, but I don't know enough PHP. I mean, all the code snippets for filters and hooks, I end up just copying and pasting from
Okay. But yeah, this is what a function does. A function is something that gets executed every time you call it. Mm-hmm. So in this case, I'm calling it all the way here below using this init hook, which is what WordPress offers you as a developer to tap into it, so that you don't go into WordPress core and start adding all that stuff. Because whenever you update WordPress, all that stuff gets washed away. So you want to keep the stuff that you did whilst maintaining WordPress as new as possible. So that's why WordPress offers this called hooks.
Is there like a resource for like PHP 101? I don't want to get too deep. I just wanted to know enough that I can do things.
That is a very good question. That is a very, very good question. I mean, I have some people I admire, like I love how they explain things, but some of the things I do a lot in order to keep my, my knowledge, my brain that's starving for knowledge going. I just enroll in these courses, either as Joe said, lynda.com, or I use Udemy a lot. Or I don't know how you say it in English. Udemy?
Udemy. Okay.
Yeah, I use Udemy a lot, and the courses are really cheap sometimes. They're like for like $10. I didn't know Joe had a. Wait, Joe, you gave the course or you took the course?
I took the course.
Okay.
Yeah, if you're a member of the county library in your area, most of them have Lynda for free, so that's a great resource.
That's really cool. I didn't. Oh, well, I wish they did that here. So yeah. I mean, Udemy, the course is maybe like 10, 15 bucks, but let me tell you, for that value, for that knowledge, it gets you really, really far. Obviously, you have to select. There's a lot of people that have the same course, so you kind of go with the reviews and what people say. And I recommend, obviously, there's a few video samples. Because I have to quote Zach Gordon here, who said that in Phoenix. Some instructors you might not like, and some you do. Like, some people don't like Zach smiling all the time. I'm like, man, I love that. But no, he said that in a WordCamp. I was like, okay, man, you're absolutely right. Some people don't like the smiles, others absolutely love it. So hit the few free preview videos that they have. And if you find an instructor that you like, you just take the course.
Awesome. All right, and then there's another. Oh, I'm sorry. Were you going to jump in, Alicia?
Yeah.
Oh no, I can say something really briefly. Is that I was in the same position Maria was in, and I built the original theme that's still online. I didn't know any PHP, and it shows. But things like this, just dig in and practice. And he enlightened or elucidated what you might have been stuck with, and then giving you names for certain things. So it's like, just keep going to these WordPress meetups, especially the ones that are geared toward more technical stuff, and take your funky code there and show people, and they'll go, oh, this, and that's how you'll.
Right. Is that what you do? Alicia, you had mentioned you do labs. Your Meetup labs.
Show up tomorrow.
That's what you do?
Show up it's the next week. Yeah.
Okay, well, I want to sign up. So can you put that in the chat? Because I'm definitely going to sign up.
Okay. Sure.
Yeah, I'll have a slide on it as well. So,
okay.
Yeah, so don't worry about your code or stuff like that. I mean, if I look at my code 10 years ago, I'm like, whoa, I did this. You know, this is part of the craft that you do. You get better and better, and you are never satisfied with what you do. This is why I absolutely love this specific field. It's so demanding for to get better and better as the years roll. But I definitely feel that you gotta love it, and you gotta have the stomach to get stuck 5 hours out of this little guy over here. That you can laugh at it and say, okay, I was stuck for 5 hours with this.
Right. I've been there before.
Okay, well.
I told somebody it's like this. You have a 26-mile marathon to run, and you know that you got to get it done. You got to get to the end. So you run like 10 meters, and your foot gets up, and you can't figure out how to put it down again.
Exactly.
Yeah. The race is ahead of you, and you're like, what?
So I recommend the usual, when you're stuck, go outside, go walk, I don't know, wash the dishes, take a shower, or do something that is off the computer. But you still keep thinking about it and keep trying. You're going to get there.
Awesome.
I don't know anybody who hasn't gotten there.
Awesome. All right. And then there was another basic question. It was on the tool that you use. You use the Web Code Pro. I mean, I believe, no, it's MySQL Pro. Is that a premium tool?
No, this is a free utility. I absolutely recommend it. I mean, I can do the command line stuff. I can do it, but sometimes I just need to see it. So this is called SQL Pro. You just Google SQL Pro. Let me do it. SQL.
It's Mac only, though.
Is it? Well, there has to be another utility for PC, but yeah. It's this one. I'm sorry. I'm just a huge Mac fan. I'm sorry. But yeah, I'm sure there's just a utility for it, SQL Pro. But if you have a Mac, yeah, you're
a Mac snob.
I am.
Yes, yeah.
Totally.
All right.
Yeah.
And then there's another basic question. Once you create these custom post types and taxonomies, do they travel when you change? That's totally separate from your theme and things like that, right? Once you create it, will that plug in?
That's why I said initially I can either go the theme route or I can go the plugin route. But in this particular meetup, I went the plugin route because I'm using a template that is not mine. It's a template that is it's a WordPress template. It's a free one. So if I hit the update button and I have all my stuff in the template, that stuff is going to get washed away, and you definitely don't want that. Because if you didn't save your code, you're going to lose all of that. So that's a really, really important thing to take note. If you do changes in a theme and someone updates it by accident, either you or your client, you are going to lose all the stuff that you did, and that's going to be that's a really, and if you don't have that backed up, that's going to be a painful situation.
What's the advantage of the plugin versus a theme approach?
Well, the plugging approach is safer in the event that it gets it doesn't rely on the theme. And for me, the theme approach is just better because I have all my code base inside the theme. It's just more convenient, but that's part of my workflow because I use custom theme development for clients. So I'm going to build a theme specifically for that client. I have my own, the term is boilerplate. I have my own boilerplate code, the code that I use, and that I know the client is not going to, steer away from that. And whatever he does, he can update the theme or whatever. It doesn't matter. So
sorry, Marco, go ahead.
No, you asked. I'm sorry.
Okay, it's one faster than the other?
No, absolutely not. No. It's the same thing. Performance-wise, it's the same thing.
All right. Chris asked, I seem to recall a plugin generator website that would ask one for all the details necessary for a custom post type and then output the code automatically for cutting and pasting. Is that still around? Does anyone know?
I don't know. It should be, but that's part of the reasons why I mentioned in my slides. Yeah, there are plugins that do that, but plugins might give you all the scenarios that you might not need, and this is going to give you something that I call decision fatigue. You're going to have to make a lot of decisions on the dashboard, and you're going to spend a lot of time, configuring this stuff. I mean, you might prefer that, but I sure don't. I have my own boilerplate code, and I just do a few tweaks here and there, beep, 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 and that's it. So I don't spend a lot of time deciding or configuring stuff, especially if it's a site that is not, it's hosted, it's somewhere, and it's slow. So I prefer to work like that. That's part of my workflow. Yeah.
It's faster to do what you're doing. I've done both.
Yeah. Okay.
It's
okay. I believe you.
So I have another beginner level question. So is this, do you think specifically for your client in terms of creating these, or do you think on a more broader scale? So for example, you're creating taxonomies for the film industry that can go from customer to customer that's in that specific field. Is that how you always look at it, or are there different reasons for picking the type of custom post types and taxonomies that you pick?
Can you repeat that question, because it's not very clear?
Do the custom post types you build, are they entirely unique to your customer, or do you think I'm going to use this for someone else and you build it?
I think it's a little bit of both, because I've never encountered a scenario where I'm going to use the same type of custom post type with two different clients.
Okay.
But I never run, but it's possible. I mean, if for example, I have two real estate clients, and I might have the same needs, and I might use the same one with this client than the other. But sometimes it's just different. It depends on like I said, it depends on what the specific needs of the clients are and what the information that the client needs to convey on that website. So I kind of abstract the information, and I look at it, and I can associate that with WordPress, and I say, okay, rating system, or like let's keep the real estate example. Rating system. Some clients might need it, others might not. A map, both of them might need it, but one of them might prefer to work with Google, and the other, for example, with Mapbox. So what else? Like amenities that the property is going to have. Some clients will have very basic definitions when it comes to that. Others will have the whole thing. So again, it's something that I adapt to the client, and I think that's best.
Cool. Did we have any other questions that we wanted to ask Marco, or any other comments? How many folks have used custom post types and taxonomies previously?
I can't even imagine making a site without it.
So, Alicia,
yeah, me neither.
Alicia, give us some examples of a client that you've created them for and what were they?
I was actually going to wait to show it because it's ridiculous. So at the end, if there's time, I can show the Lucidity Festival.
Okay. Well, if you want to grab the...
Okay.
If
I've already got it set up in the background. Because the taxonomy talk is going to go into that. Because he's going to do the taxonomies too, right?
Yes, yes, that's the second part, correct.
But
Okay.
it's all tied together, so.
Okay, we'll keep on rolling.
All right, let's keep on rolling then.
Or before
The
we
second part, yes.
Sorry. Did we want to take a quick 5-minute break before we get started, or did people want to keep going?
I'm going to keep going. I'm keep going. Thumbs up, you got the reactions, people.
I'm hydrated, so I'm okay.
All right, keep on going, Marco.
Zoom too.
Okay. Okay. So now we're going to discuss about taxonomies. I'm going to go a little bit faster. This is basically the definition that WordPress again uses. It's this whole Wikipedia academical definitions that I think it's a little confusing sometimes. But taxonomies are basically a fancy word for organizing stuff. It's just a labeling system, and we humans tend to label things a lot, whether for for better or worse. But it's we want to group things in order to create order, so to speak. So we might label things according to what our specific needs are. I mean, in our house we label stuff, we order stuff by certain criteria that we do. Websites are no different, and this is a huge thing that I can speak for hours as far as labeling and how the information is going to get grouped. But WordPress allows you to do that as well for your custom post types. So WordPress has its own grouping system out of the box. We see this over here. Let me close this. Let me keep that. Close this. If we go to post types, we have categories, and in categories, everything, all the blog posts that get added are uncategorized. But you can add your own categories here, or you can just write a new post over here. And this is just a blog post, a Meetup post, a blog post, and you have your categories over here, and you can add your new category, my deep thoughts over here. So here are my thoughts. WordPress is the best. So that's what categories do. So I can label things, I can group things, and in here I just group this as part of my thoughts. So with custom post types, it's no different. I mean, we can do exactly that. And it's a different relationship. It has to do with these little guys over here, these tables. I'm not going to get into that because that's database stuff. But basically, you can tie custom post type with custom taxonomies. So we're going to do exactly that. So it's a little bit more complex, like I said. So we're not going to do that. Why is it important? Again, I'm going to repeat the slide, but I'm going to repeat what I said. WordPress is like a Swiss knife. We may need to label things or we may not. Again, this is something that when you're discussing with your client, you're going to know. I'm going to have to quote my father on this one when he's a doctor, and he always, he's a veterinarian, he's a pathologist, and he always tells me 80% of the problems are solved when you ask your clients, and the other 20 is what you know. So when you ask your clients for the scope of the work, you're going to know if you're going to need taxonomies or not. So again, it's a Swiss knife. You may need it, you may not. So that's why every scenario is different. So again, I emphasize on know your IA, which is information architecture. Know how your site is going to be divided, and if you are going to need these categories, these taxonomies or not. Again, we're going to go a little bit faster here, and this is the theory. We're going to do this, of course. To register taxonomy. So instead of register post type, it's register taxonomy. We're expecting the taxonomy, this little guy over here called OBJ. It's called object. We'll get to that in a minute. And the arguments. Again, it's the same drill as a custom post type. Again, we tap into it using the same hook. In this case, it's the init hook. So this is It's pretty straightforward. So again, I'm not going to dive into that a lot. This time I'm not going to skip the slides. So parameter taxonomy, this guy over here just registers a custom taxonomy. OBJ, this is the custom post types where this taxonomy will be associated with, because I already created the custom post type called movies, but now when I create the taxonomy, I need to tie them together. I need to make sure that they can speak to each other. The arguments is pretty much the same as custom post type. I need a list of arguments for this particular taxonomy. So we're going to discuss them a bit. Let's get some code done. So I'm going to keep all of this, and let me zoom a little bit so I don't have this in my face. We're going to keep all of this. I'm going to minimize this so we don't have this huge scrolling thing. And now I am going to add another action. I'm going to tap into the same hook called init, because the slides over here said it's init. This is what WordPress, and our callback is going to be this time another function. And this time I'm going to name it Meetup CTX for custom taxonomy and CB for callback. It's just this is called the naming convention. We all have that, and now I am going to find my function.
You misspelled Meetup.
I'm sorry?
You were going to show me before it doesn't work.
Yeah, that's correct. That is correct. Thank you. And I made a second mistake. I have CB over here. I'm repeating myself. This time I'm going to define this little fellow over here. So I'm ready. I use this. I just add this comment so I know this bracket closes the function. So I am ready. Now I am going to define the labels for it. So I'm going to do, once again, I'm going to do the labels. This time I'm going to go a little bit faster. So for this particular example, I mean, what are movies without genres? Is the word in English correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. In Spanish, Canada. But genres, you can't. I mean, you got to know it. You got to know the action, the drama, the sci-fi, the comedy, and this and this and that. So I'm going to do that. So I'm going to define a genre taxonomy, so I can group my movies according to that specific genre. So I'm going to go over here and I'm going to do the array as usual, and I'm going to copy this stuff, which are the labels. This stuff is this is exactly the same drill that we saw in custom post type. Again, a name, it's called the key. This is called the key in PHP, and what the value is going to be. In this example, I'm using these little underscores over here. These have to do with translation. But since this is going to be in English only, we're gonna, we're just gonna leave them there. But just so you know, I added them there and didn't in the other one. So that's a bad coding practice on my behalf. But these little underscores mean exactly this. So I'm gonna define the name, movie genre, singular, add new, etc., etc., etc. So these are just labels. So again, I'm going to give you guys the URL for you to look into it. This URL over here, this will get you all the labels that are available to create your custom taxonomies for WordPress. So once this is defined, I am now ready to add the arguments. So as we define in the slide over here, we need this guy over here, the arguments. So I'm going to do exactly that. And this time I am going to name it, I'm going to name this array like this. This is also an array. And I'm going to go over here, and I'm going over here, and I'm going to paste the values again. I am going to go over it. Let me do this because, yeah, I suffer from that. So again, labels are the labels that I defined over here are these ones. So I want this for this particular taxonomy. The description is text is hard. Public, it's pretty similar to custom post types. Some of them are different. The only difference I need you to understand is this one, the hierarchical one. Again, this I don't know if I explained, but if we go back to our WordPress installation over here, and if we go to our blog post, we saw this over here called categories and tags. Now, what is the difference between them? Basically, they're pretty much the same, but categories allow you to have a parent-to-child relationship. So I could have, for example, action and I could define the divisions within action, like let's say Western sci-fi action. I don't know. It's the scenarios that you can think of, but for cooking, I guess it would be a little bit more concise, because I could have Indian cuisine, which I absolutely love, but India is so big that the cuisine varies from region to region. So I could have one from Rajasthan, or from Delhi, or from Agra, from the south, and so on and so forth. So I could have a label for Indian cuisine, but I could have sub-labels for specific region within India. So again, the hierarchical variable over here allows me to define this to true or false. If I use it to false, it's going to behave like a tag, which is this over here. Tags they don't have that hierarchy. They just do either one or the other. So what can I think of a tag? I could think of, for example, director. If I had, I need a taxonomy for a director. You can only have one Martin Scorsese. So you just define a tag that's called Scorsese, or you can have, I don't know, Clint Eastwood as another director, and so on and so forth. But the key difference for you to understand this is, do I want a parent-to-child relationship? Yes or no? If the answer is yes, you're going to need categories, and you're going to need to define this hierarchical key as true. If not, you need it as false. In this case, I'm going to set this to true because of the example I just said. Action movies might be divided into, I don't know, I'm not a movie buff, but let's just do that. Again, the rewrite slug, it's the client is asking me, just divide this, make sure the URL is like this, so it's going to be like this, and the actual taxonomy term, in this case, let's say if I have an action one, it's going to be like that, and that's how the URL is going to be divided. So this is we saw in the previous example. This is pretty straightforward. So I'm kind of done with the arguments. Again, you could get the arguments. I'm going to paste this link over here, and I'm going to put this here as a comment. And in this URL, you can see all the values that you can have for this arguments array. If we take a look at, again, in WordPress, it's going to give us a plethora of values that we can use. Again, it covers pretty much everything you can think of. And, you know, you're welcome to read it if you want, or if you have a specific scenario, you just go into this URL and whatchamacallit, you just make the research to see if it's possible or not. So in this case, I think we're ready. We're good to go. Now, according to our slides presentation, we need to register the taxonomy over here. So we're going to register the taxonomy over here. This is a function, I'm going to call it. And what do I need? I need to know the taxonomy name. In this case, I am going to name this as genre. I'm going to need the object. So what do I mean with this? An object is going to be, it could be an array or an object, but where do I want to tie this to? Right now I'm just registering it, but I'm not tying it. So if our previous example, we made the movies, so we're going to do movies. We're going to do movies for now. We're going to do movies. And what are the arguments? The arguments are these fellows over here. So when I'm going to define this, and I'm going to say all the arguments I'm going to need to register the taxonomy called genre are defined above, and they define the labels and so forth. So as I previously mentioned, I kind of use this as well to flush my rewrite rules, which is what WordPress uses to, you know, give it a permalink to, so that you can see the pretty links and not the PHP stuff at the top. So I'm going to rewrite my rules. I'm going to save this, and this should now, when I ever go back here, this should go, and under movies, I have movie genre over here. So when I hit movie over here, I can add a genre. So I am ready to do this. So I can actually say this a name, action. And the slug is going to be the action. Is there going to be a parent? Right now, no, because I haven't created one. So here is where the latest stuff revolving action that sometimes looks like comedy is. I say this because of the Fast and the Furious. I'm sorry. It's just that when I see that movies, they look like comedies to me. I mean, they're so unbelievable that I'm like, wow. So I do this. And now when I go to my movies thing over here, and if I hit City of God, I have my genre over here. It's action. But let's say, okay, no, City of God is not genre. It's more drama. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to define that. I'm going to add this, and I'm going to update it. And now I have categories. So if I go to movie genre over here, and I hit this, I can go to the drama thing over here, and I can click on this little number here, and it's going to give me all the posts that are tied to this particular genre, and I can just view them over here. And if you take a look at the URL structure, I'm sorry you can't see this because it's a little small, but the top movie genre is part of the URL, which is what I defined over here. Again, I did this out of SEO reasons because the client asked me to, and I have drama, and now this is going to give me, according to the theme hierarchy, this is going to give me all the movies that are tied to movie genre. I'm going to give you one more example of this. For example, here I defined this when I registered the taxonomy over here. I said that I wanted this to be tied to the movies only. But let's say, for example, and this could be possible, you want this for your blog posts as well. So you're like, okay, you know what? I want this for my blog post as well. So you create the array over here, and you just separate the commas with commas, the name of the of the post sites you want this taxonomy to be tied to. So if I hit this and I save, now if I go back to my WordPress installation over here and I refresh, I should have movie genres for my posts as well. So again, you don't know when this might happen. There are scenarios, especially with tourism. Sometimes I've noticed that tourism share location. So you're not going to have two locations. You just create a taxonomy that's called location, and you tie the both type of posts, together. And you do that when you register the taxonomy over here. Again, this allows you to have absolute control over what it does. And this was really fast. I think that's really that's how you register custom taxonomy. That's really it. I'm sorry, this one is really fast. I wish I had more to say, but I know that's really it. I think I'm done. So the key takeaway from this is for you to associate these two things and either tie them together, or you could have a scenario where you want to add, you already have the custom post type and you want to add it specifically taxonomy just for that. But typically I work with them hand in hand, and that's it.
Hey, I don't think you ever have to apologize for working your magic there.
No, it's just that I was like, oh, that's it. Well, it's just that this part went super fast, so I was like expecting a little bit longer.
Awesome.
But it's just that we already saw this, so we saw some of the things here, so I didn't want to repeat a lot of it.
All right. Do we have any additional questions or comments or discussion that we want to have on this topic, or for Marco, before we take a quick look at the slides to wrap it up here?
You know what?
Hey, Marco, how long would you say, I know you mentioned when you started with WordPress, in terms of the development work that you've done in the WordPress space, has it been a 3-year arc, or how long have you been doing this type of work? So for example, if someone
I could give you the pilot number, or I could give you the years. Well, they say that in life, you have to dedicate yourself like 10,000 hours or something in order to truly master it. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I don't believe that number to be exactly like that, but I do think you have to dedicate a lot of hours to it. In order to
I think so many of us are copy pasters. We can find a solution somewhere on Stack Overflow.
You absolutely can do that. And that's how I started as well, until I started to question things. I mean, I have this really curious soul, I would say. I need to understand things. I need to know how they work and why are they designed like that, because the WordPress community decided that this is how the way you register post types. So I want to know, I want to understand, and if I can contribute in the future, which is kind of like it's not a dream, but it's something I definitely want to consider to contribute to WordPress coding. Yeah, you need to understand.
So how long did it take you to go from the copy paste phase to where you can write it?
I would say maybe 2 years, 2 or 3 years. Yeah.
Would you agree, Alicia?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I might have copied and pasted a little while longer because I actually just dove in and was working on projects and stuff. But I did a lot more. It was almost like the copy and paste was necessary for me to evolve. If I just tried to learn it, I would have gotten really bored. But as I would, since the things kind of were on the line, I would definitely. I had one project where I crashed and burned. It was like in New York, right? So I lost 3 hours in the whole deliverable time and stuff, and I just couldn't wrap my head around it. I'd already had custom post types down, but I found a plugin called Post to Post by Pippin, or not Pippin, it was someone else, Scribu. He no longer works with it, but I couldn't. The PHP got me at that point, and I realized that at that point I needed to maybe learn a little on the side, and I started doing that, and now it's like. I just want to say that this was absolutely excellent.
Yeah, Marco, this was great.
Thank you. Well, I do agree with Alicia. I started to copy and paste because when you start getting client work, hey, can you do this? Can you do that? Yeah, I can. Yeah, absolutely. And I've heard this in different WordCamps. Say yes. Say that you can do it.
The difference that you will recognize is that you're scared in the first part. And then somehow it evolves to, I got this.
Yes.
Go to the Divi. Don't. It's just not a Divi thing. You can tell it straight up. You're like, no, they're gonna no. So, but there's time I can show you what I do for Lucidity Festival. But I'm gonna wait till these sponsors.
Let me run through these real quick. Like Anna mentioned at the top, Green Geeks is doing some webinars coming up, but they also have a great Twitter page with a lot of tutorials. You see here, you can find WordCamp Santa Clarita. We have a monthly meetup on general WordPress. We also have an Elementor meetup that meets here. You can.
I'd like to get into that.
Yeah, I'll talk a little bit about that in a second.
Yeah.
And you can always find most, WordPress a few updates back started adding events to their news tab. So you can find out all these meetups. And I think they do them the week of. So you can find information on upcoming meetups just by clicking on the pencil. So for example, I think there was a question about Alicia's. If you put in Santa Barbara by clicking on the pencil, it'll show her meetup as well. I'm going to have that later. We can skip that. We talked about that. I mentioned earlier, next week I'm going to speak at WordCamp Denver on plugins. Marco touched on it at the beginning. Yeah, I'm first up next Friday. It's gonna.
What time? I want to see you.
Yeah, I think it's 8:45 Central.
Okay.
So yeah, you're gonna have to look at the time conversion tool.
That's like an hour. Okay, I'll do it for you. 7:45.
But the awesome thing, I think for folks that haven't done a WordCamp in the past, because WordCamps generally cost $40 to $50. Now that they've gone online, they're all free for the near future. So it's a great opportunity to see topics like Marco's times 24. Most WordCamps have multiple days, up to 24 to 36 speakers. So it's a great opportunity to learn more. So if you're interested in Denver next week, you can go there. Other local meetup opportunities, like I mentioned, next week we're going to have someone in to our Elementor meetup to talk about advanced custom fields and another advanced topic in relation to Elementor page building next week at 11, next Saturday. So join us. He's an Elementor leader from the Las Vegas group. Sumner and Ron's group is going to meet next Saturday as well at 2 o'clock, and they focus on accessibility topics. They're going to have a great meetup where they're going to demo how someone that's without sight sees a website. So that's really.
Oh, I definitely want to see that.
Yeah, that's going to be illuminating. So there's a link in the slides to that. I have a link also to Alicia's meetup as well.
Oh, which one?
The South Central Coast, because I'm like that.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, she represents. If you think Santa Clarita is north, she represents everything north of us.
Yeah, it's San Luis Obispo to Ventura County.
Yes. So, and like I said, her group is great because they're sort of a workshop type of meetup. So they talk specific projects like and Alicia, if you want to go ahead and talk a little bit about what you do at yours.
Yeah, people just show up with issues and we find out that those issues are teaching. Because that's what happens when we're all by ourselves anyway. We're kind of like, we have an issue and then we go Google and then we learn and we go to Experts Exchange or something like that. And so even people who come to the meetup and they didn't have anything, they say they leave it learning something because there was actual real life examples and they saw aha moments and they learned stuff. So that's what I like. It's always different. So occasionally we'll have a speaker. We've had it like once or twice. We've had a speaker. But.
Awesome. And then Sumner or Ron, if you want to talk a little bit about your meetup next week, this is a great opportunity.
Well, our meetup is really exciting, to me anyway, as an accessibility specialist. We have two people from a company called Nobility, and Nobility is one of the leaders in accessibility services and products, and they're highly respected in the community. And some of the founders and employees of Nobility are part of the WCAG volunteer team, those that have been actively involved in creating the WCAG. So the meetup that we will have two presenters, one who has been blind since birth, and they will talk about and show how a non-sighted person accesses a website, and they will also discuss what are the biggest problems and how to overcome some of those problems, how to identify them on your website, and why it is essential to have a native user test your website and not a sighted user test your website with a screen reader, because there's a vast difference, a huge, huge difference. And as a side note, the majority of the cases that are being taken to court on websites not being accessible are done by a blind user. So that is the number one issue, is that websites are not accessible to screen readers properly. So I'm excited about this because both of these people that are going to be presenters, they're just awesome. And a lot of people have been asking, what's the difference? How does a person without sight actually go through my website? Why can't I just use VoiceOver? Why can't I just use an automatic checker? And I think a lot of those questions are going to be answered by these people. I'm more excited.
And it's awesome. Sumner.
Oh, and before I finish, if you have a website that you would like one of them to crawl live while we're doing this, you have that opportunity. We can't promise everybody will get their website crawled by, the screen reader, but we want to give people an opportunity to see firsthand how something they built, something they have their hands on, what the result is. I'm sorry, Joe.
Yeah? Oh, no, I was just going to say, and that kicks off, you've got 3 consecutive meetups that are going to deal with similar topics or topics that are really critical. You want to go ahead and touch on the other 2 as well?
Well, we've already posted our meetup schedule for July, and the first one in July is actually hands-on. That one, we will not have a presenter. That's for people to show up with your laptop with a problem you're having with accessibility, and let's work through it. And then at the end of July, we have a person that's going to be showing us proper captioning for your videos. And she is a person that was born without hearing, so she will show why it's so important, what makes the difference between good captioning and really what she calls craptioning, which are bad captions. Ron should not use a automatic captioner. I think Ron found something on a YouTube video where she said she was born deaf and the automatic caption said born dead. So, things like that will show people the right way, the easy way, and the value of captioning. She's an amazing person.
Awesome.
So that's what we have coming up.
Awesome. Yeah, so it's exciting. A lot's going on in the North Valleys here. A lot of great information. Got a lot of great learning. So I have her site up on the screen here. So just click on the link and it'll take you to the events. This is Alicia's page in the South Central WordPress Adventure
I
Group.
see this.
So again, I'll include these in the slide deck. I'll put the slides on. Yeah, I'll put the slides on our Meetup event page, so you'll have that after this as well. Also, for one of the questions that Marco mentioned earlier, Udemy has a lot of great learning opportunities. You do have to pay for this one. Also, if in your particular area, maybe your public library or your county library, here in Los Angeles, for example, I can close this. Yeah, they have an online learning tab. So Linda is free with an account. You use your PIN number as if you were going to check out books, and you just jump in free. So like I mentioned, I did a Morton Rand Hendrickson lesson on custom taxonomies and custom post types and taxonomy. So it's a great free way. They have learning tracks or learning paths that'll take you through a beginner's level, an intermediate level, all the way up to an advanced level, and all for free.
Hey, I didn't know that. I bet you they do that here too.
Yeah, most libraries have it. I think it was part of their, when they were bought out by LinkedIn, that was part of their settlement to make sure that Linda was free.
Oh, did everything turn blue instead of yellow?
Probably. Yeah. So thanks again to Marco for doing such a great job today on the presentation.
Thank you for having me.
All right, and it's so awesome when these folks see me. I run up to them at a meetup and say, "Hey," and I'm all excited, and I'm like, "Hey, you should come and speak at our meetup," and you actually came through. So I really appreciate it.
Cool.
That's really
you guys still have time. Someone still hang around while I show you the Lucidity Festival.
Definitely.
Okay, well let me share my screen here.
Yeah.
So I set up. Let me make sure I do the set up.
Yes. So
okay.
Okay. Thank you, Summer.
Okay, so I've been working with Lucidity Festival for 8 years.
What is Lucidity Festival?
Lucidity Festival is like a brainchild of my friends, and I thought they were like losing their mind. And it's a 3-day, sometimes 5-day festival that occurs in the foothills of Santa Barbara at Live Oak Campground. They've been pulling it off year after year. You camp, there's DJs and music and workshops, consciously chosen vendors. There's like an area where families have with their children. It got voted best family festival, and it's huge like festival like awards thing. They went to Las Vegas to get the award and everything, and so it usually happens in April. So now it's hopefully will happen in November. We don't know. And so even so, I built out this site, and there are 300 plus participants. They have 6 realms on the ground with various stages within each realm, and participants are on the stages. So that's like, let's sit down and talk about the website kind of thing. You can't just use pages and post for that, especially when people are coming in here for information. So by the way, this slider on the home page is actually a custom post type with, as Marco said, just the title. That's the only thing I needed on that page.
There you go.
Right? Okay. So whenever they like take this down, I go draft, and then upload. It's very simple. So you hit the musicians is the one where it's really, well, we'll see what I did. So there's, like I say, if you the experiences here are the stages, installation art workshops, healers, performers. There's no way that's going to be posts with categories, because every one of them has a different category for whatever they do. So we'll go and we'll look at music. So the musicians, we look at the musicians page here. This is what Marco was talking about. This is the dynamically generated archive. I could have changed this to awesome, amazing musicians, but we don't need to do that. So some of the categories, these were the taxonomies.
Right.
These are taxonomies. So the Polish ambassador is the headliner. So we'll go and check out his page. This is, Marco didn't get into this, but this is like the template hierarchy. This is single musician.php, and it's just the layout on the page. So whenever a musician shows up, this is the layout that will happen. And so we have, I'm also using custom fields where people put in like this SoundCloud thing or whatever. So that we have musicians, but if you go down to the bottom here, you'll see something interesting. This is the stage that he's on. And if I click that stage, which is a custom post type, all of its own.
Okay. Yeah.
You know, I'll see all the musicians who got connected to that because I was choosing it as a post to post. Now it's very easy to do connections like that when you find a plugin like Advanced Custom Fields or Post to Post that can now tie two post types together and make things happen. So I can say loop through the musicians who are associated with this stage. And when I go to the musician, I can see loop through the stages associated with this musician. So it becomes this amazing website where like people can just go all over it and kind of get lost in different rooms. It's like a museum. And so then when you go to the back end, so we have posts, we have, I don't even know where pages ended up. It's down here because I'm using what Marco also mentioned, the positioning numbers. I'm getting stuck because I have so many in here that I can't actually move pages lower than that. If you can help me out with that someday in the future, Marco. But I wanted to like,
what is it? What is it? What is the problem?
I can't get, okay, so I've got here's all, first of all, if you guys can count the different post types, I don't know if you can even see.
You have a lot. I can see them by the pins. I recognize them by the pins.
So we've got, this one is even,
you have a lot of, yeah.
Schedule edits. Because in a pinch, everybody was on site and the schedule this year, we decided to have a poster and they're like, someone changed something. And I'm like, all right, cool. We'll make a custom post type called schedule edit. And it just shows up at the top and they just keep on adding this change. Then they read that first before the poster so that they won't get off, you know, kilter when there's something's not matching. So that kind of thing. So I have like stages, we have the realms, the characters, there's a character for each realm. So we get to connect those post types. Musicians, workshops, the artists for the museum, performers, all this, and the slides. It's so simple. I can even show you the slide one. It's just so simple. This is it. You know, these are the ones that are flashing through. This one's drafted because we're not doing this right now. And if I wanted to just have the Polish ambassador, I'd just like, you know, basically check all these and uncheck him and then do draft. It just works just like the post if you've ever used, you know, just the regular post thing. So that's what I needed these to do. And if we were to go in and I would show you, you know, all the, see, this is the beauty of it is that all the musicians, I click something and they're just all in one place. Now I've been in I love this, what you call the spaghetti coding, because we have the cowboy coder and the spaghetti coding. Do you know what I'm saying? So it's like, not a good Western to watch, okay?
Yeah. And then you tie in the film connection in the spaghetti Western. You have a spaghetti Western.
So I've seen where they used pages for everything, trying to do a site of this caliber. And so you're like digging through, like, which one was a musician? You wanted to change something. So now here I can just look, I can see, and also you can, if you know some PHP and stuff, you can actually edit even how things show up on the admin. You don't need to get a plugin for that either. So I could actually have different columns that I needed. So connected stages and environments is something I needed to show. And so it's showing me this. So if I, you know, just want to see, and there's like more going on here. There's like the custom post types came into play with the submission application. So I'm using Formidable Pro when there was a front-facing application for each post type. So if someone needed to apply for something, they would apply, but as soon as they hit the submit button, the drafted profile was already published. And I synced Advanced Custom Fields with the fields of the actual application. And then we shot the application information over to something called Podio in its own special space for musicians, for workshops, and the curators could work there. You can't do that stuff without custom post types. It's like, to be honest, I just don't even, there's the most basic site I've ever done, at least somehow there was a custom post type required. Like maybe there's services that they do, you know, like what are your services or something. And I would just, that's a custom post type. I don't even think about it. People are like, put it on a page. No. It's a custom post type because we can scale it.
Hey, Alicia, there were a couple of questions that popped up when you were going through the site. It looks incredible, by the way. One question was, does the number of custom post types affect your page speed?
No, it doesn't. What affects the page speed would be like what the amount of actual on the coast of actual like coding. Like there may be some things in here that are doing it. Maybe some of those like throwing in the videos and actually Marco could answer that question.
From a technical perspective, it doesn't, because the post table is indexed in WordPress. That allows it to hold like a gazillion type of posts, because that table in particular is indexed.
Nice.
Remember the utility stuff that I showed you? That program, the SQL Pro, the WP post table is actually indexed. That from a database perspective means that it's faster to query, to get access to the elements in it.
So in terms of a housekeeping thing, is there such a thing as too many custom post types in the admin over there?
No, because it's indexed. It's indexed.
Okay.
Yeah, it's indexed.
It's better housekeeping because you're actually you're organizing things. Like it's better organization straight up down the line.
Do you feel like you have to add a new one each year, or do you feel like you're?
Oh, and this is another thing that's vitally important, and like what Marco was saying about the strategy. Every year there's a different theme on this. So this is a plugin, always a plugin. And actually, I have a thing where I differentiate theme-related functions and global functions. Like I'll ask myself, if by chance my theme fails, or if somebody just decides to turn on a different one for like a month or something, will vital information they need disappear? And if it's the post types, I will never put that in the theme. I just won't even do it, even if the theme I built, because sometimes that theme has failed because there's something weird, and they'll revert to the default theme. That's what WordPress does. And then when they do that, they'll lose all their custom post types too. And so I always do the plugin version. And
yeah, that's interesting that there's 2 votes for plugins. So it sounds like that's the way we should learn that.
It feels so cool when you say I made a plugin. So I mean, everybody thinks it's hard, and all you gotta do is put that declaration at the top, and you're already done. You just put stuff in it.
Awesome. That's incredible. And then the other question was more of an aesthetic question. What was the name of that font that you used at the top? It was sort of script.
Oh my God, that font's gonna go. Yeah, this one.
Yeah.
That's a Google font, isn't it?
No, it's not. It's not.
No?
It's not. No, yeah.
Okay.
It looks like a font company font.
It is.
And I thought it was called Pacifico font, but no.
Pacifico would be better, and I'm gonna go look for it. Because this is too. I had to use it because they used it here. I think it actually might be an Adobe one, but
Oh.
Yeah, it's a font kit. It's a font kit font.
Yeah.
So you have to pay for it. Yeah, basically.
Yeah. Because one year they actually created their own. It was gorgeous.
Oh, that's nice.
The year.
I think in Chrome you can right click and you can inspect it and you can see the fonts used. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I use Firefox, by the way. Sorry.
Oh, you do. But it's better than Safari. But I've got to change it. It doesn't read well with most, like 50% of the things on here, and I just hadn't gotten around to it. I've got to find something similar. I'm a font snob too. So I really.
Yeah, so am I.
God, you're my spirit animal or something. You're like moving things over in the tab, and you're like, I'm like that. I'm like, yes. Yeah. Everything you're saying, totally funny. But,
oh, that's awesome. So anything else you want to share, Alicia? So what time of year is this event, and how does that affect?
Oh, God. Usually it's in the spring. This is such a beautiful, if I go to, this might be slowing the site down. So elemental avatars. Let's see, I don't know how long it's going to take this to load, but they come up. These are the avatars. They even incorporate people dressed in costume who roam around in this thing. And there's like a cycle. So they have we're in the Earth cycle or Earth year. And so they'll have like they've already done a 6-year cycle. And so now they're into like a whole nother 6-year cycle. They have a whole narrative around this whole thing. No other festival's doing that. And so it's usually in April, like the first or second week. This year it's going to be in, let's see, let's go to the homepage here. November 6th. I hope it is. It's like similar weather, but November 6th through 8th. They also have something where they've done this before. They kind of shrunk it down a little. It's called Course Week, where you come 2 days before the festival and take one of 5 different course tracks on like permaculture or body movement and stuff. It's just, and they're all shoot from the hip. They just come up with these ideas, and you're like, did you plan this out? They're like, not really. And it's just, it feels like a family when you're there. You can only have up to 4,000 people on the site. So it's a wonderful, wonderful. So lucidityfestival.com, check it out. And they're also doing an online event called Sunday Fun Day. They actually, since it was canceled in April, 2 weeks later, they learned what they could out of Zoom. And they managed to do like a virtual festival for 2 days, starting with an opening ceremony, everything online. And they live streamed it through YouTube and Twitch. And then anybody who was in the Zoom was actually spliced through on the other feeds. So when there was a DJ playing and you were dancing, you felt like you were actually dancing with people. And it was like so touching. And I felt so connected more than I actually was at the festival. It was the most beautiful thing. And I couldn't believe they pulled that off. So they're doing that once a month too. And if you look on Facebook for a Lucidity Festival, you'll find their group and you'll get a lot more information there. So.
And so you said you've been doing it for how many years? And do you work on it by yourself, or do you have a team of folks that work for you?
All by myself. I've almost been suicidal sometimes. I've actually morphed them into this system that we're using. And me and one other select few people are inside the website. The first year I did it, 24 people got in there and were editing. And I didn't realize you're not supposed to give that away like that. Don't do that ever. Don't let people go in. It was every time I went in, I spent like 20 minutes trying to fix something that somebody messed up. They didn't know how to edit. It was cutting and pasting from emails. It's not a good thing.
All right. Awesome.
So anyway, I'll stop my share.
Well, that's awesome. That was great.
Yeah.
All right, it looks like Marco has stepped away for a second. I was going to ask him if anyone wanted to contact him. I know he's on Twitter at MarcoBL, I believe. So you can get in contact with him there. Does anyone else have any other announcements or comments? I just wanted to thank Sumner, again, Sumner Davenport and Associates, for providing the Zoom link for this meetup, which is kind of awesome. She's contributing that to the community. So thanks, Sumner. You're the most awesome person I know. And we're going to be back next week for an Elementor meetup. Again, we're going to be talking about dynamic features in Elementor. It's on our other meetup channel. And then Sumner is going to have hers next week as well. All right. So if that's it, again, thanks again, Marco, for everything. This was awesome. Thanks, Anna and Green Geeks.
Good information. Good information. I learned a lot.
Yeah.
Awesome.
I'll see you, Alicia. I'm going to check yeah, definitely.
Go ahead and sign up. I'm going to sit. I should, as soon as this is over, I'm going to post the next event. So that'll be swinging through.
Very inspired.
Yeah, so I'm going to save the chat as well, and then we'll put the video up on our local page, as well as put it on WordPress TV. So thanks again, everyone, for coming, and we'll see you next week.
If there's any like weird passwords or something on Lucidity, I don't know what I was doing. Blur anything out, Joe, if you see anything weird.
Oh, definitely. I'll check it out first. I'll definitely look at it now. Or I could even cut that part out, but I'll blur it. Yeah, definitely. All right, thanks, everybody. See you next time.
Bye. Thank you, Joe.